My name is Elaine Whitaker. I'm 67 years old and 5 weeks ago, I buried the only man I ever truly loved. Gerald, my husband of 42 years, died on a Tuesday morning at the kitchen table halfway through a joke. If I drop dead from this powdered creamer you keep buying, you'll finally know guilt, he said, chuckling, tapping his spoon against the side of his coffee mug. And then it happened. His hand jerked. The spoon clattered to the floor. His eyes widened, not with pain, but confusion, like he'd forgotten how to breathe. I was still holding a butter knife in my hand when I screamed his name and rushed to his side. He was already gone before my knees even hit the tile. Called 911 on shaking hands. The voice on the line was calm, clinical, but nothing could pierce the shock buzzing through my ears. I followed the instructions: chest compressions, keep trying, keep breathing, but I already knew. His body was still warm, but something was missing. Something essential. The soul that animated every wisecrack, every late-night kiss, every quiet morning over eggs was gone. When the paramedics arrived, they confirmed what I already knew. Cardiac arrest. Sudden. Massive. Unrecoverable, they said. DNR on file. I just nodded. The house was still filled with his voice, his scent, his presence. But it was like standing inside a bell jar. Everything outside felt muffled, too loud and too quiet at once. And that was when I made the call. I dialed my only child. My son, Nathan, 38 years old. My whole world once. The phone rang 5 times. Then he picked up. I was still trembling when I said, "Nathan, it's your father." He collapsed. "He's dead." There was a pause. A long one. Then his voice came through. Flat, distracted. "Mom, today's Megan's birthday. Can we talk later?" First I thought I'd misheard him. It didn't register. My brain wouldn't accept it. He continued. "She's got this brunch planned and people are over. I'll call you after." I didn't say a word. Didn't beg. Didn't scream. I just lowered the phone slowly and ended the call. I didn't want to hear another syllable. Not one more from the child I had carried, raised, loved, who couldn't even stop eating pancakes to acknowledge that his father had just died. For the next hour, I sat on the floor beside Gerald's chair, his coffee cup still half full, his reading glasses folded beside the crossword. I held his hand. I whispered his name. I begged the silence to lie to me. Later that day, after the coroner had come and gone, after the body bag, after the paperwork, after the echo of his last words still clung to the tile floor, I went upstairs. I found Gerald's phone on the nightstand. There it was. A missed call. 10:42 p.m. One last try the night before. He'd called Nathan. He hadn't answered. Gerald hadn't left a voicemail either. Maybe he didn't want to bother him. Maybe he felt something coming. That knowledge gutted me. We had no other family. Gerald had a brother who passed 10 years ago. I'd lost my sister to breast cancer 15 years before that. And Nathan, he had become a husband and father, but somehow that had made him more distant, not less. Especially since Megan came into the picture. The next morning I called again. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt like the right thing to do. Megan answered. Her voice was bright. Perky. Elaina. We're just heading out. What's up? I wanted to remind Nathan about the funeral, I said. Tomorrow at 10. Oh, her voice faltered slightly. He's still thinking about it. We booked a cabin for the weekend a while ago. There's a cancellation fee, and the kids have been so excited. She kept talking, something about mental health and not wanting to bring everyone down. I hung up mid-sentence. I refused to grovel for my son's attention at his father's funeral. The service was small, dignified. Gerald had always hated fuss. But the absence was loud. Every other conversation seemed to dance around the question, "Where's Nathan?" No one asked directly, except for Frank, Gerald's college roommate. "Figured your boy would be front and center today," he said with a puzzled smile. I smiled back. I had to. But something inside me cracked. A long, slow split in the place where forgiveness used to live. At the reception afterward, Gerald's coworker Brian approached me. "I hope it's not too soon," he said. But Gerald seemed a little worried the last time we spoke. Something about helping Nathan out financially. I blinked. What? Brian held up his hands. He didn't say much. Just seemed stressed. Mentioned something about Megan's medical bills. I didn't press. I thanked him, excused myself, and walked to the restroom where I sat on the closed lid of the toilet, gripping the sink edge to keep from shaking. That night, I poured myself a glass of Merlot, sat in Gerald's chair, and opened my phone. Megan had posted a photo. She was wearing a bright pink dress holding a mimosa. The caption read, "Best birthday ever. Love my hubby." Posted during the funeral. During the eulogy, I dropped the phone. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. My stomach rolled with a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with rage. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep. I went to Gerald's study. He was meticulous. Every bill filed. Every record labeled. He always said, "We don't have much, but what we have is in order." And it was. I found the key tape behind our wedding photo. The filing cabinet opened with a soft click. Inside were years of documents, tax returns, retirement plans, wills. But one folder stood out. A navy blue file, labeled Nathan Transfers. My breath caught. Inside were bank statements. 15 transfers over the last 18 months. $2,000. $3,500. $8,000. One labeled, Urgent Megan Medical, $12,000. My hands trembled as I flipped to the back. Tucked between the final statements was a handwritten letter. Gerald's handwriting. Yellow legal pad. Addressed simply, Nathan. It read, "This is the second time you've lied to your mother. I kept quiet, but if I find out you're using this money for anything other than what you claimed, I will cut you off. I love you, but I won't let you take advantage of her trust." It wasn't signed. It wasn't sent. It was dated 2 weeks before he died. I stared at the paper, at the signature that never came, at the warning Gerald never had the chance to deliver. The next morning Nathan showed up, 5 days too late. And that's where the next part of this story begins. The days after the funeral blurred into each other, gray hours marked only by the ticking of clocks and the hollow thud of sympathy cards landing in the mailbox. Elaine Whitaker, 67, moved through the house like a shadow. The quiet had never felt so loud. Nathan still hadn't called. Not once. Not even a text. Gerald had only been gone a week. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, the very place where her husband had died. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table. The morning sunlight streamed in through the blinds, casting long bars of light across the wood grain. She hadn't touched Gerald's chair. It remained just as he left it, his glasses still resting beside the folded newspaper. She wasn't ready to disturb the ghost of routine. The memory of Nathan's flat voice over the phone still echoed. "It's Megan's birthday, Mom. Can we talk tomorrow?" Those words had carved something out of her, left behind a cold vacancy she couldn't name. But something deeper, sharper was now clawing at her. Suspicion. Not just grief. Not just absence. But a need to understand what her husband had been carrying alone. Elaine retrieved the small brass key taped behind their wedding photo in the closet. Gerald had once joked it was the vault key, but she always knew it was really just his way of keeping things neat, private, orderly. She unlocked the filing cabinet with shaking hands and began flipping through folders until one practically leapt out at her. Nathan Transfers. What she found wasn't just a few generous parental gestures. It was a timeline of silence. Months of wire transfers, some modest, others not. $2,500 here. $4,000 there. And one that sent a chill down her spine, $11, $7.50 labeled simply Megan Emergency. Gerald had never mentioned a word. Buried near the back of the folder, folded carefully between two statements, was a piece of yellow legal paper in Gerald's unmistakable handwriting. It was addressed not to her, but to Nathan. "Nathan, this is the second time you've told your mother one thing and done another. I've kept quiet because I wanted to believe you. But if I find out you've lied about Megan's expenses again, I will stop the transfers. I love you, son. But I will not let you abuse your mother's trust." It was dated 2 weeks before Gerald collapsed at the table. He never sent it. Elaine's fingers gripped the letter, crumpling the edges. Her pulse drummed in her ears. Her mind swirled with a dozen fractured memories. Nathan brushing off calls, Megan canceling visits last minute, vague references to financial struggles. Had Gerald been shielding her? Or had they both simply been too afraid to confront what their son had become? That night Elaine didn't sleep. She sat on the couch clutching the yellow letter, staring into the darkness. She kept hearing Gerald's laugh, how it always rumbled from deep in his chest, and the way he used to squeeze her hand during long drives without saying a word. She'd buried the man who spent a lifetime building their life together. And her son didn't even show up to say goodbye. The next morning, as the sun crept over the hedges outside, Elaine called Alan, the family's longtime attorney. She asked for an appointment that same day. "No rush," he said kindly. "But of course, I'm here when you're ready." "I'm ready," she said. And for the first time in days, her voice didn't tremble. Elaine gathered everything. The folder of transfers, Gerald's unsent letter, and her own handwritten notes. But she also printed something new. A photo Megan had posted during the funeral. A selfie, holding a mimosa. "Best birthday brunch ever," it read, posted just minutes after the eulogy had ended. Elaine included it not out of spite, but out of clarity. When she arrived at Alan's office, she sat across from him and said, "I need to make some changes to my will." Alan leaned back in his chair and nodded. "Tell me everything." She did. Not with anger, but with the cold calm of someone who'd reached the end of pretending. They structured the estate into a trust, one that would pass to her granddaughter Ava on her 25th birthday. Educational support could be accessed earlier, but nothing extravagant. And nothing, not a single cent, would go to Nathan or Megan. "I want to add a clause," Elaine said. "If either of them tries to challenge it, Ava gets everything immediately. They forfeit everything." Alan looked at her for a long moment. "Are you sure?" Elaine slid the yellow letter across the desk. "I'm sure." He nodded slowly and began writing. By the time she walked out of that office, the sun was setting in streaks of orange and pink across the horizon. And she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not joy, not relief, but a kind of steadiness. She had done what Gerald never could. She had drawn a line. Not out of vengeance, but out of protection. For Ava. For Gerald's memory. And for herself. That night, as she sat back in Gerald's chair, she didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply whispered into the quiet, "We're going to be okay, love." And for the first time since he died, she believed it. It was a rainy Wednesday when Elaine opened the front door to find her son standing there. Nathan had always looked a little uneasy when he wasn't in control, but today he looked like a man unraveling, his jacket soaked, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his eyes darting past her shoulder into the quiet house. She didn't move to hug him, didn't even step aside, just looked at him until he said, "Can we talk?" Behind him, Megan sat in the passenger seat of their car, arms folded, eyes fixed forward, like a statue. Elaine said nothing, just turned and walked into the living room, leaving the door open. He followed, dripping water on the floor. He didn't comment on the familiar furniture, didn't glance at the photo of his father on the bookshelf, didn't ask how she'd been. He sat on the edge of the couch, like a guest in someone else's life. "I should have come sooner," Nathan began, wringing his hands. "Megan's birthday." Elaine raised a hand. "Don't." The silence stretched between them like a drawbridge slowly lifting. When he finally met her eyes, she asked, "Did you know your father tried to call you the night before he died?" Nathan blinked. No. My phone must have been on silent. We were out to dinner. Megan planned. "You keep saying her name like it's a reason," Elaine said. "Like it explains why you didn't show up to his funeral." He swallowed hard, then looked down. "I didn't know he was sick." He wasn't. He dropped dead between sips of coffee. Nathan didn't answer. He stared at the rug like it might provide a better response than he could manage. "I found the transfers," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "And the letter he wrote. The one he never sent." His head snapped up, color draining from his face. "Mom!" Elaine stood and walked to a drawer by the fireplace. She pulled out a yellow envelope and handed it to him. "He was going to cut you off, Nathan. Because you were lying to us. About everything." Nathan read the letter in silence. The way he folded it afterward, neat and slow, told her all she needed to know. He'd seen this coming. He just thought it wouldn't catch him. They were loans, he muttered. They were lies. Elaine replied. And now your father is dead, and you skipped the only day that ever mattered to him. Nathan's face hardened. You think this is easy for me? Do you know how tight things have been? Megan lost her job. Ava's school costs a fortune. I didn't come here for a fight. I came to talk like family. Elaine felt a chill move through her chest, colder than the storm outside. You came here because you're worried about the will, she said. His silence was an answer. I've already updated it, she added. Everything goes into a trust for Ava. You and Megan are not beneficiaries. Nathan stood abruptly. You're cutting us off? I'm protecting the only one left who still has a chance to grow up right, she said. Your father gave you everything, and you treated his generosity like a checking account. You weren't there when he needed you. You weren't even there to bury him. Nathan's jaw clenched. You don't mean that. I do, Elaine said. And I meant it when I told the lawyer. If either of you challenge this trust, Ava gets everything immediately. No appeal, no second chances. A car horn beeped twice from outside. She's calling you, Elaine said, nodding toward the driveway. You should go. He moved toward the door, then paused. You don't have to do this, Mom. We can fix it. Elaine shook her head. You had your chance, Nathan. Every missed call, every ignored message, every time you chose her birthday brunch over your father's deathbed. That was your decision. He stepped outside without another word. The door closed behind him like punctuation. Elaine leaned against the frame, heart pounding, hands steady. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one she'd just walked through. But for the first time in a long time she felt dry. Clear-headed. She'd spoken her truth, and it hadn't broken her. That night she wrote a new letter. This one for Ava. She tucked it away in the same drawer beside Gerald's framed photo. One day, her granddaughter would know everything. Not the version Nathan would spin, but the truth. About love, betrayal, and what it meant to choose dignity over dysfunction. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm cup of chamomile tea, watching the rain roll down the windows like threads unraveling. The past was a mess, but the future? The future still had hope. 3 weeks passed after Nathan's visit. Elaine spent them in a quiet rhythm. Early walks, long afternoons reading in Gerald's chair, evenings writing letters she might never send. The storm inside her had calmed, but it hadn't cleared. She still didn't trust the silence. Then one crisp morning, she found an envelope in the mailbox. No postage, no return address. Just her name, written in Ava's careful cursive. Elaine's heart skipped. She locked the front door behind her and carried it to the kitchen table, her hands trembling. Inside was a small black flash drive. She stared at it for a long time before sliding it into her laptop. At first, there was just a folder named for Grandma. She opened it. Inside were dated subfolders, each with files, screenshots, audio clips, even a few shaky phone videos. The first audio recording played Megan's voice. Sharp, angry. She's using that will to manipulate everyone. Fava takes her side, I swear. I'll pull her from school. We'll homeschool her until she learns who pays the bills. Elaine's hands curled into fists. Another clip. Nathan's voice, low and weary. Just let Mom play her game. Ava's young. If she cooperates, we can still use her later. A cold wave rolled over Elaine. Her breath caught. Then came the final file. A video labeled Kitchen Night.mp4. The footage was dark, but the voices were clear. Megan whispered into her phone. If we push just a little more, she'll crack. We'll say she's confused. Maybe even get her lawyer to question her mental state. One hearing. That's all it takes. The video ended with Ava's quiet, shaken breath. Just before the clip cut off, Elaine leaned back in her chair, stunned. Her granddaughter had heard it all, seen it all. And while Elaine was busy trying to protect Ava from the fallout, Ava had been documenting everything. Proof of the manipulation, the gaslighting, the whispered plans to undo what Gerald's death had left behind. Buried at the bottom of the folder was a text document. Grandma, I didn't know who else to tell. I hear them at night. I know they're lying. I believe you. I'm saving this just in case. I love you. Elaine closed her laptop, wiped her eyes and sat in silence. She had known something was wrong. But this? This was a war being waged under her own roof, and Ava had been fighting it alone. Elaine backed up the flash drive to a secure folder, then made 2 physical copies, one for her attorney, one for her safe. She also printed the transcripts. Everything. Because now it wasn't just about protecting Ava's inheritance. It was about protecting her voice. That afternoon, she updated her will again. This time she included a new letter to Ava, sealed and dated, to be opened if anything ever happened to her before Ava turned 18. In it, Elaine wrote, "Your bravery saved me, Ava. I thought I was shielding you from the truth, but it turns out you were shielding me. One day when you look back on this, I want you to remember that you were the only one strong enough to speak up. You are not like them. And I am so proud to be yours." She placed the letter in the safe, next to the original trust documents, the audio files, and Gerald's unsent letter to Nathan. That night, she sat in Gerald's chair, cradling the flash drive in her palm like a relic. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just vowed, quietly, fiercely, that her granddaughter would never feel unheard again. A week later, Elaine's lawyer, Alan, filed an addendum to the trust. It included Ava's evidence and a provision for her full protection in the event of a legal challenge. Alan didn't ask questions. He'd seen enough. Megan and Nathan didn't know yet. But Elaine did. She knew that the house was no longer theirs to watch. The silence they left behind? It wasn't peace. It was a reckoning. And it had begun. The mediation room was beige, windowless, and far too warm. A glass table with water bottles. Cushioned chairs arranged in false civility. Elaine sat at one end, composed, hands folded. Her attorney Alan beside her, with a slim folder in front of him labeled simply, "Evidence." Megan and Nathan arrived 7 minutes late. Megan walked in first, heels sharp, perfume louder than necessary, wearing a blazer that screamed courtroom confidence. Nathan trailed behind, face drawn, eyes darting. He didn't look at his mother. Megan didn't need him to. She came ready to lead. The mediator, a calm woman named Diane with salt and pepper hair, welcomed them with the standard rehearsed warmth. "We're here today to discuss the terms of Ms. Whitaker's estate planning and address any concerns raised by Mr. and Mrs. Langford," she began. Elaine stayed quiet. Alan simply slid the folder forward. Diane opened it, eyes scanning the labeled contents. Bank transfers. Gerald's unsent letter to Nathan. The recording of Nathan's visit. And the flash drive from Ava. Diane's face changed by the 4th document. She paused, adjusted her glasses, and asked Megan directly, "Were you aware your daughter recorded multiple conversations inside your home referencing attempts to influence Ms. Whitaker's estate?" Megan blinked. "Excuse me? Your voice appears in at least 3 recordings. The transcripts are included. The term mental incompetence is used by you. And Mr. Langford is heard agreeing to pressure Ms. Whitaker." Megan scoffed, leaning back. She's 12. She doesn't understand context. But Nathan's silence screamed louder than her denial. Elaine finally spoke. "You tried to gaslight my granddaughter into silence. But she knew the truth. And now you do too." Diane turned to Nathan. "Do you wish to respond?" He looked down, rubbing the side of his face. "I didn't know she recorded anything." Elaine's voice was clear. "You didn't know because you weren't listening. Not to me. Not to her. Not even to your father, who spent the last months of his life trying to protect you from yourself." Nathan didn't meet her eyes. Megan crossed her arms. "You're punishing us for grieving differently. For not being as emotional. That's not illegal." "No," Ellen cut in. "But manipulating a minor, suggesting elder fraud, and attempting to influence legal decisions under false pretenses is unethical. And possibly criminal, depending on how far you were planning to go." The silence that followed stretched like a thread ready to snap. Diane looked at Elaine. "Ms. Whitaker, do you intend to revise the trust based on today's meeting?" Elaine shook her head. "Nori vicens. The trust stands. Ava is the sole beneficiary. Nathan and Megan are to have no access, financial or otherwise. And should they challenge the trust again, Ava gains immediate full control, and they forfeit all visitation until her 25th birthday. Megan laughed once, hollow and bitter. So we're just cut out. For good. Elaine turned to her. You cut yourselves out the day you used my son's death as leverage. The day you tried to silence Ava. The day you skipped the funeral for a birthday mimosa. Nathan finally whispered. Mom, I didn't mean. But you did it, Elaine said, calm but sharp. And meaning less than nothing when your actions leave scars on children. Diane nodded. Unless there is further legal cause, this matter is settled. The trust is airtight. This mediation is concluded. Megan stood, grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. Nathan lingered. Elaine stayed seated. You think this is what Dad would have wanted? He asked softly. No, she replied. He wanted you to change. But he didn't live long enough to see that happen. Nathan nodded once, eyes glassy, then left. Ellen packed the documents quietly. Elaine sat still. I didn't win, she said. No, Ellen agreed. But you ended the lie. That evening, Elaine sat on her porch as the sun dipped low behind the trees. She held Ava's flash drive in one hand, Gerald's letter in the other. Symbols of what had been lost, and what had been found. Later, Ava came over. She didn't ask what happened in the meeting. She simply sat beside her grandmother and handed her a small notebook. This is where I wrote down everything I was too scared to say out loud. Elaine opened to the first page. In Ava's looping handwriting. I kept hoping someone would listen. But then I realized maybe I had to speak first. Elaine smiled, tucked the notebook beside her in the rocking chair, and took Ava's hand. You did, sweetheart. You spoke. And we heard you. The wind picked up. The porch chimes sang softly. And for the first time in months, Elaine felt something settle deep inside her chest. Not peace, not yet. But the start of something real. The days after the mediation felt like the final stretch of a long, bitter winter. Nothing dramatic happened. No more confrontations, no more phone calls from blocked numbers, no legal threats. Just silence. And somehow that silence was louder than the chaos that came before it. I spent those quiet days cleaning out closets not because they needed it but because I did. I needed to move. To sift through memories. To choose what stayed and what left with the dust. One afternoon, I found the last of Gerald's sweaters tucked in the back of the hallway closet. I pressed it to my face and breathed in the faint scent of cedar and coffee. And for the first time since the funeral I cried, not from pain, not from anger, but from the kind of longing that doesn't ask to be fixed. I missed him. Not just the man he was to me, but the way he loved people without hesitation. The way he had tried, even with Nathan. Especially with Nathan. But I didn't linger in that grief. I folded the sweater gently and placed it in the memory box I had started building for Ava, one she wouldn't receive until she was ready. Maybe not for years, maybe never. But I needed to make it. A box full of stories, letters, snapshots of who her grandfather really was. Not the version edited by loss or conflict, but the real one. The man who made his family pancakes every Sunday and danced with her in the kitchen at age 5. The man who never stopped believing his son would come around. I was sitting in the living room working on that box when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ava standing there, her arms full of folders and notebooks. College prep, she said with a grin. You promised to help me make a budget. I laughed and stepped aside. Come on in, Miss Coraline. She rolled her eyes but didn't stop smiling. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Gerald had died, the same one where I'd rewritten my will, signed trust documents, read letters, and declared new beginnings. This table had witnessed everything, and now it would witness something simpler. Something softer. Ava flipped open her laptop and spread out her notes. Okay, so tuition's covered by the trust, right? And the dorm fees too. Yes, I nodded. Books, essentials, and a small monthly stipend for personal expenses. Enough to be comfortable, not enough to be foolish. She chuckled. Sounds fair. As we worked, I watched her face. The concentration, the independence, the way her brow furrowed when numbers didn't add up. Gerald would have loved this. He always said she had his mind. You know, she said, not looking up. Dad asked if he could come to the move-in day. My hand froze over the calculator. I didn't say anything. I told him I'd think about it, she added quickly. What did you want to say? I asked gently. Ava bit her lip. That I don't know how to look at him and not see the way he looked away when Megan spoke for him. That I don't know if he's sorry or just sorry he got caught. I reached across the table and touched her hand. You don't owe him clarity he hasn't earned. She nodded, eyes misting. I wish he was the kind of dad I could call when I'm scared or happy or just homesick. I know, sweetheart. And sometimes I still love him, she whispered. That's not wrong, I said. That's honest. She closed her notebook. I think I'll let him come. Not for him. For me. To see if I can do it without needing him to be anything more than what he is. That was Gerald's granddaughter. Not naive. Just brave. The weekend before she left for school, we had a small dinner. Just the two of us.
No speeches, no sentimental farewells.
Just lasagna and pie and music playing softly in the background. She brought June a new collar with her initials engraved on the tag. So she doesn't forget me. As if June ever would. Move-in day arrived bright and too early. We loaded the car, filled with bedding and books and a nervous energy that tasted like hope. Gerald would have made a checklist. He would have insisted on labeling everything. Instead, it was just me and Ava and June curled up in the back seat. We arrived at the campus and parked near the freshman dorm. And there he was, Nathan, standing beside his car, holding a box labeled Ava's towels. Megan was nowhere in sight. He looked thinner, older, like regret had been wearing down the edges of him. He didn't wave. He just waited. Ava walked up first. She didn't hug him. She didn't scold him. She just said, "You can carry that to the third floor." And he did. The three of us moved boxes in silence. Not tense. Not warm. Just neutral. When the final load was inside, Ava turned to me. "Can I have a minute?" "Of course." I stepped out into the hallway, but not too far. Just enough to give them space without surrendering her to him completely. I didn't hear the full conversation, just murmurs, a few pauses, and then finally her voice. Clear, certain. "You don't get to call yourself a father just because you're standing here today. You missed the part that mattered. You missed me. And I don't know if we'll ever fix that. But I'm not carrying it for you anymore." Then she opened the door and called out, "Grandma?" I came back in. Nathan nodded at me, eyes wet, mouth tight. "I'll see myself out," he said. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to give him anything. As he left, Ava turned to me. That's the first time I said it out loud. "How do you feel?" "Lighter." We unpacked together for another hour. She hung up her clothes, arranged her books, placed a photo of Gerald and June on her desk. When it was time to leave, she hugged me tightly. "Don't cry," she whispered. "I'm not," I lied. "I'm just proud." She waved as I walked away. I glanced back once to see her in the window, already reading, the sunlight catching the ends of her hair like a promise. That night, I sat at home with June on my lap, tea in hand, staring out the window. The silence didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt earned. We had survived the storm. Not unscathed, not untouched, but unbroken. And somewhere on a college campus, a girl named Ava Coraline Whitfield was writing a new chapter. For her. For me. For Gerald. And that was enough. This story reminds us that family isn't defined by blood or titles. It's defined by presence, respect, and truth. In the quiet years of life, we often reflect not on the noise of parties or the weight of inheritance, but on who stood beside us when it mattered. The betrayal of a child can feel like a second grief, and yet, from that pain, comes a powerful truth. We can choose integrity over appeasement, and love rooted in honesty over obligation. For older adults especially, this narrative is a gentle but firm reminder that it's never too late to set boundaries, protect what matters, and leave a legacy shaped by values, not guilt. It teaches us that silence, when chosen for peace rather than fear, is a strength. And perhaps most importantly, it shows that healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's found in the simple act of being seen, being believed, and being remembered, not for how we suffered, but for how we endured with quiet dignity. In the end, what we pass down isn't just money. It's the example of how we face the hardest truths with grace and courage.